When it comes to defining a year game releases, people have their own favorites based on which system they play on. Some people are PlayStation only, and some are Xbox only, while others only play Nintendo, and some even mix in all three of the major systems. While I'm mainly a Nintendo player, there was one certain game that came out earlier this year that was only available on both PlayStation and Xbox at the time of its release, but more on that later. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to cover go over my favorite games from 2023. The only rule for this video is that sports games will not be eligible for this list, since all the companies that make their major sports titles always give them annual releases. That said, here comes the list in no particular order. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, February 2023. This beloved Wii classic from the early 2010s made its return to our screens in the second month of the year, and it is one that I enjoyed a lot. If you all recall, this game was first announced in the September 2022 Nintendo Direct, aka the infamous Farming Direct. And the main reason for that particular Direct earning that nickname was because the majority of the games shown in it were all farming games. Yeah, no thank you. However, when this game was announced near the end of that Direct, I knew I had to get it. After all, who doesn't love Kirby? I know I love the adorable paint guy a lot. If you don't have this game yet, I highly recommend picking it up, as it's an instant classic. What makes this even better than the original Wii version is that the life change on the life system that this game has. Initially, on the Wii, your lives would reset whenever you turned the game off, but that's not the case on the Nintendo Switch version. On this version, if you turn the game off and then you come back to it later, then your lives you're at, like, say, 12, 13, or whatever, will still be there, which actually makes playing through the game much easier. Not only that, but this version also has some bonus content that wasn't present in the original. There's a theme park you can go to if you want to indulge yourself in some fun mini games, and once you beat the main game, there's also a post-game story that involves Magolor, which is the main villain of this game. I haven't played that storyline as of yet. I'm not really sure if I'm going to do that, if I'm being perfectly honest. This game is still an awesome delight, though, and one that is definitely worth your time. Persona 5 Tactica, November 2023. Persona games have always been known to be really good games, but the one issue I've always had with them is that the amount of time that it takes to complete the main story is way too long. Thankfully, Persona 5 Tactica avoids falling into that common trend. While the game is an RPG like the rest of the games in this series, it's a different style of RPG as you move around in a grid pattern and you have to come up with different strategies to beat your opponents. This is also the first Persona game that I've ever finished in terms of its main story, so that's definitely a positive. While this game is available on multiple platforms, I picked it up for Switch since, as mentioned at the start, that's the console I tend to play on most of the time. The game itself is pretty good, and completing the main story only took me about 20 hours, which is definitely short by Persona standards. Just for the record, though, the main story in a lot of Persona games like Royal, 3, 4, whatever, those usually tend to run like about 80, 90 hours or so. So, yeah, for this game, its main story to only clock in about 20 is definitely a breath of fresh air. While I may not be the biggest Persona fan in the world, I did actually enjoy this game, because I've been branching out into different franchises ever since the Switch first launched back in 2017, when previously I had only limited myself to games that I have personal interest in. That trend may continue with the successor system, but we'll have to see what happens there. Super Mario Bros. Wonder, October 2023. I think it's safe to say that this game was the popular favorite for a lot of people this year, including myself. It even got nominated for Game of the Year, along with Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which had come out in May. And even though it didn't take that prize home, just getting nominated is still a terrific achievement for this game. 2D Mario had basically been stuck in an endless repetitive loop of being boring, unexciting, and not to mention was also guilty of being too safe, since the release of the Nintendo Wii version of the game back in 2009. This game, however, changes all of that. All of the levels are new, and the game itself even takes place in a different kingdom. Instead of the Mushroom Kingdom, which is where most of the Mario games normally take place, we instead go to the Flower Kingdom, where we're tasked with helping Prince Florian and the rest of the residents of said kingdom restore peace to their land after it's taken by who else? Bowser. Are we surprised? Absolutely not. One notable difference with this game compared to previous 2D Mario titles is that your exploration of the levels is no longer restricted by a time limit. Instead, you get to go at your own paces and see everything that you want to see. There are also several different characters that you can play as. You have the standard brothers themselves, Princess Peach, Toad, Toadette, and for the first time ever in a 2D Mario, Daisy is actually playable. That's right, Daisy is actually playable. There is also Nabbit, who returns from New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, as well as 4 different colored Yoshi characters. The blue Yoshi, yellow Yoshi, red Yoshi, and of course, the standard green Yoshi. Now, plus to using Yoshis as well as Nabbit is that they can't get hit by enemies. However, they can still fall and lose lives if they fall in the pits. They're also not allowed to use power-ups, but that kind of makes sense since these specific characters are meant to be beginner-friendly. I've used a variety of different characters in this game, including Mario, Luigi, the aforementioned Yoshis, and Nabbit. This is easily the best-looking 2D Mario on the Switch, and I would highly recommend picking this up if you have not done so yet. Super Mario RPG, November 2023. So, this game technically isn't new, as it originally released for the Super Nintendo in the mid-1990s. However, I never owned a Super Nintendo at that time, so this Switch remake is essentially a new game for me. This game retains the awesome story and characters from the original, and even adds difficulty options, which I think is a perfect quality of life change, especially if you have a newcomer to RPGs. The story and characters are great, and the cutscenes make you feel like you're watching something straight out of a movie. Voice acting for these cutscenes would have been nice, but I suppose you can't always have everything that you want. There's also pop culture references aplenty. A good example of that being the part where right after star number 6 is obtained, it gets stolen by a gang called the Axe Rangers, which of course is a parody of the old Mighty Morphin Power Rangers television series. You then have to fight these Rangers to get that star back. These Rangers are supposedly invincible according to their dialogue, but I have to agree with that. And while I'm not normally a big RPG guy unless it's Pokemon, an exception obviously has to be made for this game due to the fact that it stars everyone's favorite plumber. For years, this game had been stuck on the Super Nintendo and subsequently the Super Nintendo Mini, and was never released onto the SNES app for Nintendo Switch Online. But now that this game is available on Switch, a whole new generation of players can enjoy this masterpiece, which is a very good thing indeed. Out of all the characters in this game, I find Mallow to be the most adorable. If I were to ever cross paths with this adorable fella, I would definitely want to give him a nice big hug, because that's just how adorable he is. That also serves as my current Nintendo Switch profile picture right now as of the time of recording. F-Zero 99, September 2023. Well, looks like Nintendo didn't forget about this franchise after all. F-Zero had not seen a new release in years. Prior to this release, the last new F-Zero game for home consoles was F-Zero GX on the Nintendo GameCube. So, to say that F-Zero fans were thrilled about this release would be an understatement. The only downside is that it's a Battle Royale type game. It's named similar to Tetris 99 and the now defunct Pac-Man 99, but it's still a lot of fun to play. Even though this is a new game, it still has a bit of an old look and feel to it, as they base this off the original F-Zero, which first released on the Super Nintendo back in 1991. Of course, in the original, you just face off against AI bots, but here, you compete against 99 other racers to try and be the best, hence the game's title of F-Zero 99. While the amount of content in the game isn't very much, it's still fun to pick up and play every now and then. Hence why it's one of my favorite games from this year. On a side note, if anyone from Nintendo is watching this, a brand new traditional F-Zero for the next system would be highly appreciated, please and thank you. Hogwarts Legacy, February 2023. This game was first announced in the second half of 2020, and one that I've been excited for ever since the original reveal. This was originally supposed to come out before 2023, but multiple delays kept pushing it back. The delays were worth it though, because this game was absolutely beautiful once it did finally come out in the second half of this year. Personally, I didn't get to experience this masterpiece until the spring because the Xbox One version, which is the version that I played, didn't release until May of 2023, and therefore I had to wait a bit longer. But as I said, the wait was worth it. Anyone who's a fan of the Harry Potter franchise, like I am, would definitely enjoy this game. The fact that none of the familiar characters for the Harry Potter universe are in this game is a bit disappointing, but it is what it is. In games like this, I tend to focus on story more, but this one encourages the player to complete a lot of the side quests. That meant for this game, I had to change my style a bit in order to complete this game. During much of my playthrough, I did find myself enjoying this game a lot. By the time I finished, however, I found myself burned out, but that probably had to do with the fact that this was the only game I probably played for a week or two since first starting it up. Altogether, including the story missions and side quests, my playthrough ended up lasting about 55 hours, which is definitely a lot. A Nintendo Switch version of this game did release in November, but I don't think I'm going to pick that one up, because I honestly don't see myself playing another 50 or so hours again. Still a really fun game for those who like Harry Potter, and I'm excited to see what a possible sequel can bring to the table. And as a side note, for those wondering which house I chose in my playthrough, I chose Gryffindor. Mainly, why did I choose Gryffindor? Well, because that was the house that Harry and his friends were in during the movies, and I kind of honestly saw myself as a Gryffindor, and hence the reasoning for that choice. Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince, December 2023. The last entry on this list is a bit of a surprising one, since I don't really play Dragon Quest all that much. However, this game is pretty much a Dragon Quest version of Pokemon, and I have to say it's pretty good. It's honestly amazing how nice games can look if you give them proper development time and force out an annual release. Take notes, Game Freak! One difference in this game compared to Pokemon is that instead of using specific types of balls to catch your monsters, you have to scout them to get them to join your team. The world in this game is so nice, and the monsters, for the most part, look pretty cool. At the time of this video, I've only played about an hour of the game, so I can't really go into more detail about this game at the moment. For a late year release, though, it is pretty good for what it's worth. And those are all my favorite games from 2023 that released this year. What were some of your favorite games that came out in 2023? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you all in 2024. And in fact, our first video of 2024 will be released tomorrow morning, where we start going through an all-cup tour on Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for the Nintendo Switch. So hopefully you all enjoy that, and I will see you all there. Bye-bye.